What is grief? Grief is a change. It could be a physical death of someone that you love. It could be a change in your job. It could be a change in your relationship. It could be a change in your culture. It could be a change in your health. Anytime that there's a change, we tend to grieve the things that we loved about that previous experience, and we want it to stay the same. And so when we're grieving that something has changed from one way of being to another way of being. And it really hurts. It hurts in our hearts. It hurts in our bodies, physical bodies. It hurts. Our mind may go over and over past situations or worries about the future. Maybe you're eating too much or eating too little, sleeping too much, sleeping too little. So it really affects our whole self. We may also, as well as our spiritual health and well-being, we may feel hopeless. Why me? Why this? So grief is inescapable. As being a human being, we're going to have grief, we're going to have sadness, we're going to have change. It's part of being human. And what I call moving with grief is shifting with grief and acknowledging and facing the sadness and facing and looking at and being with the pain and the changes that you're experiencing. And so I call it moving with grief, because rather than, the opposite of that would be being stuck in it, being stuck and being kind of like you're spinning your wheels. You're not, there's no motion at all, no backwards, no forwards. So I call it, it's like a dance with grief. And I've had many opportunities to work with grief. I was with both of my parents when they passed. I was the primary caretaker. Around the time that, about a year before my mom passed away, I gave birth to my third child, and he was born really sick, and he lived for 3 months. And that was a mother-child situation, of course, and that was particularly painful. And I also had, about 7 years ago, my young adult son passed away in a car accident. And so I've had this opportunity to really look at grief and to really process it myself. And I'm sharing with you some of the things that I've learned along the way and the things that have really helped me along my way. And I know those times when you just feel really alone and you're just in your own hurt. And I know for me, it's like my heart physically hurt. Like there was just, it hurt. It was a physical pain. And so some of the things that worked for me over time, and some of the things that I was able to kind of like pull out that I'd like to share with you, are that there are times when we're alone with our grief, that we're by ourselves, however that is. And for me, some things that helped me to move with my grief were journaling, gardening, going for walks, that sort of thing. Because we have that time alone in our grief that no one can really, we can be supportive, but no one really might not really get how we're actually feeling. I mean, that does happen where people do truly understand and have compassion, but we're really kind of alone in parts of our grief as well. And then there's the part of us that wants to be with others. And I found in my experiences that being discerning about who I wanted to share what was happening with me was really important, to be discerning about trusted friends or family that I would share my deepest feelings with. So being discerning and with family and friends is also another thing that I learned along the way. And then there's community. When my infant died, one of the things that really helped me is joining a group called the Compassionate Friends, which is a group specifically for parents who have lost children. And in that group, I really learned about, from other people, as well as reading anything I could find, any literature about parents losing children and grief and how to respond to it. So that really helped me being part of a formal group, as well as maybe a meditation group or a spiritual group. The other area that teasing out these areas and noticing when we're in a grief state, the other part was my connection with spirit, and wondering why me, and looking at hope and faith and trust, and kind of that connection with that infinite divine being of love was in question, or there was a struggle with that. So those are some of the 4 areas I know that help me when I'm feeling a grief now, to look at what am I doing alone by myself to work through my grief, what am I doing with other people, whom do I trust, and then there's more formal groups that may or may not be helpful to you at a given moment, and the 4th is our connection with spirit and our spirituality. And so looking at those, and just kind of looking at those parts of ourselves while we're going through a grief period, are really helpful and have really helped me, which is why I'm sharing it with you now. Being in the dance with grief is so important. It really hurts. It's not easy, but I find that when I'm in the dance and not resisting it, and being with the process and trusting the process, and when I'm acknowledging my heavy heart, my painful heart, when I'm acknowledging it, when I'm embracing it and being compassionate with myself and my process, that is when my healing begins. And that is the main nugget in this little talk right now, is to be compassionate with yourself, with your process, and to embrace and acknowledge that it hurts, that you feel alone, and that things have changed, and you don't understand it. And that is part of the moving with grief. I hope that this helps you, and you can read a little bit more about it in my blog. And there are also some links in there that may be helpful as well. So wishing you well, wishing from my heart to yours, wishing you healing and acceptance and an embracing of this human experience.